Get ready to invest in yourself and elevate your expertise with the Perio School podcast, brought to you by Perio School. It's Dr. Reena here, and you're joining us for a new monthly show where we'll be providing the latest case studies, first-hand insights, and interviews with our global dental network. Plus, we'll enable you to experience exclusive behind-the-scenes highlights straight from our global portfolio of courses. Let's get started. This season of the Perio School podcast is sponsored by Colgate. Register on Colgate's professional education hub to access all professional and patient resources, including your one-stop shop for all verifiable ECPD. Visit www.colgateprofessional.co.uk today to sign up and register. For this episode of the mini masterclass, I want to deep dive into the topic of gingival recession. Reason being is I think it's something that's not always taught in a lot of detail or very well at an undergraduate level. And then even afterwards, there's not much talk about gingival recession, whereas there's so much to it. Often in terms of assessment, what we can do for the patient, the techniques we now have. So let's take a sort of 10-minute deep dive into the topic, and then hopefully that will get some cogs turning and questions, and would love to actually revisit this topic at a later masterclass as well. So I'll give you an overview today. So I guess we should start off with a definition. So what is gingival recession? I would say it's the apical shift of the gingival margin with exposure of the root surface. And I think we have to think about, okay, so what? Does that have an impact? Do we care about that? Well, I do think often root exposure can have an impact, not just from an aesthetic point of view, but also from a quality of life point of view in terms of sensitivity. Exposure of the root surface as well means they're more likely to get things like caries. Obviously, it's case dependent, but there is an impact of gingival recession. I also think as well, from our side, in the clinic side, we've had a lot of demand on the aesthetic side for gingival recession. Patients don't like it because it's a bit like a receding hairline. It's very aging. So we've had a lot of patients directly contact us and say, even for like 2-3 millimeters of recession, saying, I don't like this, what can you do about it? So I think you are going to get questions on this. So it's a topic to be aware of. The first thing to think about with gingival recession, and I may have said it before, is be a detective when it comes to things like this. Why has my patient got gingival recession? It's usually a combination of both predisposing and precipitating factors which will actually lead to gingival recession involved in the etiology. So what do I mean by that? Let's just break it down. So predisposing factors is anything really that's going to make the recession more likely to happen. And precipitating factors are things that actually then trigger the gingival recession. And you have to find, as a detective, in your patient, a combination of predisposing and precipitating factors. So what I mean, it's not as simple as when people say, why does my patient have gum recession? Oh, it's just overbrushing. No, it's more than that. There'll be more to the story. And we need to figure those things out before we do anything about it. And actually, the patient kind of needs to know the reason for their gingival recession as well. So let's just talk about this. So predisposing factors, it could be a soft tissue factor like a thin phenotype. If your probe is shining through the gingival tissue, that's defined as a thin phenotype. So these guys are more likely to have gingival recession. That's a predisposing factor. Other soft tissue factors could be things like a high frenal attachment, because it's much harder to clean around there, a shallow sulcus depth. But there's also then hard tissue factors that can predispose to gingival recession. So this could be things like a thin buccal bone, a dehiscence, a fenestration, the position of the tooth in the arch, commonly following orthodontics. I mean, nowadays, I'm sure you've come across many patients who've had multiple rounds of orthodontics in adults. So every time, pushing the tooth out, the bone's going to get thinner, you're going to get fenestrations, the position of the tooth is not going to be ideal in the bony housing. Or there's just discrepancy in the size of the root versus the width of the bone. It's that mismatch. And also, I guess we should say as well, the loss of interproximal bone support in perio will predispose someone to gingival recession. So what you need to do when you see your patient, figure out from the predisposing side of things, soft tissue or hard tissue, which one is relevant to my patient. In terms of precipitating factors that actually then cause it, I guess there are really only two categories here. Either trauma, And that can be from things like overzealous brushing. It can be things like piercings as well. Other traumatic things, like I had a patient a few months ago who, unfortunately, she was picking at her gums, which is a form of self-harm. She was going through some personal stuff. She was literally picking at her gums. That is trauma. So we have to find these things. So we mentioned piercing. So if it's a tongue piercing, you'll get a lingual recession. And if it's a lip piercing, you'll get buccal recession. And also various malocclusions, like if you've got an overbite with trauma to the palate or a severe class 2 div 2, you may cause gingival recession. So these are all things that are traumatic. Obviously, overzealous brushing is the most common one. And then the other options, only 2 options when it comes to precipitating factors. The other option is obviously suboptimal biofilm control, which then leads to inflammation, gingival recession. That's more the periodontitis side of things. So your first step is identify the recession, and then your second step is to figure out why it's happened. What is the reason for my patient? And it's probably going to be something like my patient's tooth is very buccally placed, they've had orthodontics, they've got a thin phenotype, and they're overbrushing. More than just, they're overbrushing. The next thing to do is to actually classify the gingival recession. So like we have our updated classification for periodontitis with the staging and grading, everything else, at the same time, the BSP EFP released the classification for gingival recession. And not many people talk about this, but it's just as important. So in that paper, there are 3 different types of recession. They say RT1, RT2, RT3. So 3 different types of recession. So RT1 is when the gingival recession with no loss of interproximal attachment. The interproximal cemento-enamel junction is clinically not detectable at both mesial and distal aspects of the tooth. So that's RT1. RT2 is when the gingival recession is associated with loss of interproximal attachment. The amount of interproximal attachment loss is less than or equal to the buccal attachment. And then RT3 is when the gingival recession is associated with loss of interproximal attachment, and the amount of interproximal attachment loss is higher than the buccal attachment loss. So basically, in simplistic terms, RT1 is a little bit of buccal recession. RT2 is when you've got some black triangles opening up. RT3 is when the interproximal recession is even more than the buccal recession. So that's your third step, is to classify, diagnose, pop it in the notes. And then I guess we need to figure out, what are we going to do about this? So treatment, and what are the options? So I would say not all gingival recession needs treating, but in every single case, you want to modify the etiological factors. So anything that can be changed, like overzealous brushing, if that's a precipitating factor, then you actually need to have a dedicated appointment, either with yourself or with a hygienist, going through the techniques for these patients. I say to the patients, actually, if you've got thin gums and recession, cleaning your teeth is not easy, because you can't overdo it, because you're going to get recession. But at the same time, if you don't do it properly, you're going to get gum disease. So it's a very fine balance. So the phrase I like to use with these patients is, it's a gentle but thorough approach. So gentle, so you're not causing more recession, but thorough, because you're not causing then gum disease or risks of gum disease. So you show them in the mouth, go through it. I do suggest an electric rechargeable toothbrush, but with something like a Sensi head, a softer head. Show them how to use it. Make sure they're not actually scrubbing the brush, because remember, it's doing the work for you. So you're just supposed to hold it on the tooth a couple of seconds and then move it on to the next tooth. So home care is really, really important. Identify any other factors that we've spoken about as a detective. Why have they got it? Can we modify any of those? After that, I would say, regardless of what you do, the minimum is to monitor the gum recession. And you can do this through your pocket charts measurements, but also photographs and scans are excellent as well. Over the last couple of years, we've started using the iTero scanner for recession cases. So when they come in for their specialist assessments, we will do a full scan for anyone with significant recession, and we can then do another scan after a certain period of time, superimpose those scans, and actually use that time-lapse function to see, has there been any significant changes. So that's quite a nice high-tech way of looking at it as well. Then I guess certain patients, they might just be on monitoring it. If the quality of the gum is good, it's not progressing, you may not need to intervene. But there will be cases which you might think, okay, I need to refer now for surgery if you don't do the surgery yourself. And those kind of cases will be the ones that have got aesthetic issues, like the ones where a patient really wants to improve the aesthetics. or the quality of the tissue is not so good, like typically around a lower incisor, post-ortho, thin gums, no keratinized tissue, it's really red, there's calculus there. The problem there is a patient can't clean it properly because it's uncomfortable, you don't have good quality tissue. That's a reason to refer, that's a reason to want to do a gum graft to thicken the tissue. So also orthodontics, like you might want to get an opinion pre-ortho, especially if you've got significant recession. Do you need grafting pre or post-ortho? In most cases, we end up doing it after, but we have had a few cases where we have to pre-graft because it's just too significant. We can't take the risk. And they might need further grafting after orthodontics as well. Again, orthodontics, we could have another whole masterclass on that at some point. But orthodontics, you must make sure in your consent forms you have got recession in there and patients are aware of it. The number of patients I've had, I guess, over the last year where they say, if I knew I was going to get this much recession and had to have like 4 surgeries with you, I probably wouldn't have done the orthodontics. So just be careful with that. So yeah, there's lots of different reasons to want to intervene. Some of the reasons, like sensitivity, is not enough to surgically intervene. There are other ways of actually doing that, and doing surgery for just dentine sensitivity is not predictable. So just be aware of things like that. And I guess the other thing that your patient might ask you is, okay, fine, I want to be referred, I want to have surgery, but how predictable is it going to be? So the most predictable for coverage of the root exposure is going to be patients with really good bone levels, really good interdental support, and patients, where the tooth is not severely rotated. The larger, obviously, and the wider the recession defect, the harder it is to get full coverage. Convex root surfaces are not as good. And also it then comes down to the actual surgical technique, making sure things are tension-free, making sure the patient's compliance is good. I would not be doing surgery on a patient with poor oral hygiene, suboptimal plaque control. It's not going to work. So, and things like smokers, etc. So you might need to kind of assess the patient, give them a bit of an idea as to how predictable it will be before referring them. And then I guess surgical techniques, there are so many different recession techniques, from rotational flaps to advanced flap procedures to regenerative tunneling procedures. There's so much out there, and I would need a few hours to talk to you about it. But a couple that I think you should be aware of. The first one is the free gingival graft. And this one is not really for aesthetics. This is typically used around a lower incisor where we're just trying to improve the quality of the gum, right? The case I described to you earlier. You want to provide some tough gum, not really root coverage. Sometimes we do get that as a bonus, but not really root coverage, just tough gum, protect the area, make sure the patient can clean comfortably, make sure the recession doesn't progress any further. So that's called a free gingival graft, where we actually take a piece of gum from the palate, little square piece, and essentially create a little pouch where the recession is, split thickness, and then stitch it on. It's probably the most predictable perio surgery that we do. And just one tip I would say is, if you're referring for a free gingival graft, don't call it a free gingival graft, because I've had a patient where they actually thought we were doing it for free, which in the end we did end up doing it for them for free during our perio school course, but it is not free. So call it gum graft for patients. So free gingival graft it's one we've been doing for many, many, many years, and we still do. But you wouldn't really want to do that for an aesthetic case. And so for aesthetic cases, there are various different techniques. I would say the one I use the most is the coronally advanced flap, plus or minus a connective tissue graft from the palate. And the coronally advanced flap, it's something that Zucchelli has designed, and I follow all of his surgical techniques. Some of them, especially like multiple recession defects, are quite complicated. It's quite mathematical, where you've got to get the angulation of the cuts correct, and it's very involved. I absolutely love doing this type of surgery, and we really do get some amazing, amazing results. There's also, you can combine it with things like tunneling, or use tunneling as a different procedure. In the perio world, there are really 2 camps of people, one camp who love calves and one camp who love tunneling. I'm in the calf camp at the moment, but yeah, there's lots of different techniques, and then various other rotational techniques, etc., which you can start getting into detail. I would say though, like something that your patients might ask you about is the pinhole technique, and I think pinhole isn't something that we do because it's not really evidence-based. So I would, in our clinic, at least we always do everything that's evidence-based. I wouldn't promote things that don't have a good science behind them. Finally, with these surgical techniques, just to mention is that the healing is very minimally disruptive. I would say they do get a little bit of a swelling because you're moving the tissues. For the advanced surgical procedures, for the free gingival graft, they don't really get a swelling. But pain-wise, it's really not that bad. They take a couple of painkillers, whatever they take for a headache, for a day or so. They do need to be on soft foods for about 5 days or so, and then they're using chlorhexidine mouth rinse a couple of times a day. But people go to work the next day. They're not like bed-bound, so it's really quite minimally disruptive. And I have to say, like from when they used to do surgery many, many years ago to now, post-operative pain, etc., has massively reduced. So sometimes when you describe to the patient they might need surgery, they get really scared. It sounds like an operation, but actually it's really not that bad. I say to patients, it's just a scary word where we do something slightly different. So I think that's a good point to be aware of, especially in general practice when you're talking to your patients about it. All right, so that gives you a bit of an overview of gingival recession, why it might present, how we actually diagnose it, what we need to do as minimum in terms of monitoring it, but also the surgical techniques that are out there and what we can do predictably and what might be a good case to refer. We can take a deeper dive into some of these topics in a bit more detail, but I hope that gives you a good overview. So for our case study section today, we have Dr. Sahil with us, who is a cosmetic dentist who works literally across the road from us. And we've been collaborating on cases for many, many, many years now, since we opened the clinic, actually, like 8 years ago. We were just going through our patients and seeing which one could be an interesting one to discuss. And we have definitely found a few. So we're going to focus on one today. We'll probably do some more for you guys in the coming months. So Sahil, welcome to the Perio School podcast, and tell us a little bit more about the patient that you referred to us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good to be here again. This patient self-referred to us. He travels from up north, and his concerns was the classic situation of missing laterals. As we know, it happens in about 2% of the population, and the main problem with it is either the teeth are entirely missing or they're retained in the maxilla. So you can imagine what the situation is. Orthodontically, the gap has been closed. That's the most common approach.
Right.
And dentists have tried over the years to compensate for the canines being in the lateral position. And the problems you have are they're too long, they're too bulbous.
Yeah.
And in addition, he had an issue of a black triangle in the midline. He also had what he felt was a narrow smile. So he felt there just wasn't much premolar or molars on show, which made the whole thing worse because his canines are already far too buckled and forward. So what to do about it? He originally did the classic align, bleach, and bond approach, which went to its... He had good restorative dentists who saw him for it. They did nice jobs, but the problem is unless you significantly rebalance things by changing the relative balance of pink and white, in addition to reducing those canines, there's no way to address this. Even then, it's hard.
Yep.
I asked you to get involved and to help with reducing the amount of gum we've got on the 4, 5, 6 area. And then I think we chatted about it, and you suggested to do some further cosmetic work, right? Which you can explain.
Yeah, so he had a super high smile line, and often, you've already got a tricky situation, and then it's magnified with a super high smile. So it's not an easy case at all. Luckily, it was a very, very pleasant patient, which made, I have to say, the whole journey so much nicer. When you've got a tricky case and a tricky patient, that is like a lethal combination, which is not fun. Anyway, he was a very, very lovely guy. Even the assessment was quite tricky because there was almost two things going on. We had the fact that there was lots of gum on show, the asymmetry, the fact that around the posterior teeth, the height of the teeth was so much smaller than around the anterior. But also then he had recession around one of his canines, which made everything worse. So we ended up, and it was actually probably one of the few cases that we've done both types of treatment on. So we ended up doing crown lengthening surgery and a coverage of recession, which ordinarily you wouldn't put those two things together, but it's just to highlight that both of them can be done. You just have to think about the timings carefully. So the first steps was to get the pink aesthetic sorted. So we completed the crown lengthening surgery, and then we waited for a period of healing and make sure we got the stability, and then we intervened with the recession surgery. The only thing is, with doing all these surgeries there is the healing time. So you have to make sure you say to the patient, this is going to be a long game. It's going to be months of healing. Often these patients are in a rush. I know a lot of people that come and see you, they want a beautiful smile like tomorrow.
Yesterday.
Exactly. And it's, not realistic. So I think it's understanding sometimes the perio surgery side of things, it's not fast. Like even with periodontitis treatment, it's not fast. You've got to have patience. So setting your patient expectations from the beginning is key. I think if you've done that and people can see what the end result's going to be, which he did, they're okay to wait, essentially. One of the key things with the crown lengthening here was he also had quite prominent bony exotoses. So when he was smiling, he could really see those. And when I'm teaching about crown lengthening, I always say anything you can see, you might have to treat because it's going to annoy the patient. So yes, we've got the heights of the gingivae correct, but also we then did raise quite an extensive flap to remove and drill down those exotoses as well, which made a difference. It all went well in the end. From your side, were there any key learning points during the case?
When you called me to discuss doing root coverage in addition to crown lengthening, my understanding of it at the time was limited, and it's a unique case because you're going in two different directions, and it sort of is unnatural to think about that because you've literally got a tooth adjacent which you want to go higher on,
yes,
and a canine you want to go lower on. How to manage that clinically is interesting. I presume you did a coronally advanced flap with a CTG, right?
Yeah, for sure. So, I think the key thing to point out here is it was a very localized recession defect. So it was just around that one tooth. So we did a coronally advanced flap. That's correct. I think that's my go-to surgery. Different periodontists, we're on different camps. Some people like doing tunneling, some people like doing CAF, some are very much CAF girls. So we did a CAF with a connective tissue graft, and we look at the thickness of the tissue to decide whether we need a graft or not. So in his case, the recession actually was quite minimal, but the tissue was really thin. So we then also had to take a connective tissue from the palate to thicken the tissue as well. But you've got to get it just right. You don't want it to be overly thick and then it's not matching up with the other side. So there's that side of it as well. So, but yeah, we did it. We did a CAF with a CTG.
Circling back to your question, from the restorative side, imagine everything's healed. The gums are in the right position. The root coverage is healed enough to start restorative. We whiten his teeth, of course. And the thing that I take away from these cases every time is you need to be more aggressive than what you think.
Yes.
These canines can take more preparation than any other tooth in the mouth than maybe compared to a 6. And you have to do almost a double preparation, enough to make it a lateral size or thereabouts and enough material space. So it's very different to a normal preparation. The other thing I would take away, which I've only started doing recently, is the root emergence is also too wide. If you can access it with a needle burr or something that is subgingival, narrowing that and not creating an overhang is helpful. So doing a vertical style preparation with no margin to then allow the emergence from the gum to be better. I've had good short-term success since I've started doing it, and the papilla then just fills into that space, and it allows you to have a more natural one, because one of the limitations, even with all this treatment, is the canines occupy more space underneath the gum, and you can see it.
Yes, that's a really good point. Yeah, for sure. I think it's those subtle things that can make a big difference to the case in the end. Have you seen him recently?
I have.
It's a long-term stability for him?
Yeah. I saw him a few months ago.
He's still happy?
He's really happy, yeah. Everything's really stable. He's a great candidate for this because he's an ace brusher. He looks after himself. He wears his retainers every night. And we've got full gingival maturity now because I think it's been 2 years, two and a half. So we got papilla infill in all the areas we wanted, and originally we didn't have it because we were this case was pushing it quite far as to where you can get a papilla from canine to central and canine to premolar, and we got papilla infill. So yeah, it looks nice. And
your veneers are all good maintenance wise.
Yeah, perfect. They look brand new. Yeah, as you'd expect for 2 years. It's it is the most biocompatible and long-lasting material available, bar gold. So yeah, we'd expect it to be looking brand new from 2 to 5 years.
And from our side, we advised him in terms of perio maintenance. He wasn't really a periodontitis case as such. So I think like even 4 to 6 monthly maintenance with a good hygienist is sufficient. Obviously, depending on the patient's compliance, he was very compliant with his home care. Obviously, keen to maintain everything he's invested in. So that was fine. If you have a patient who perhaps is not so good, you may want to actually increase that interval as well.
One technical point I'd ask you about actually is, which is interesting, is when it comes to hygiene maintenance of implant ceramics, teeth-borne ceramics, do your hygienists use any particular instrumentation or settings on their ultrasonics or hand instruments to not damage the teeth or restorative interface?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the key things that has been a game changer is the EMS Airflow Plus. It's like very conservative and it works beautifully, and you can use it around, especially with the plus powder, you can use it around ceramics, doesn't damage it. So that actually is a major thing we use around it. And then just gentle use of ultrasonics is fine. We hardly really use hand, unless we have to, but like a periodontitis case, we hardly use hand scalers around things like this when you don't need to, essentially.
Would you say hand scalers are more damaging then, as an inference?
I think around fragile restorations and veneers and things like that, you have to be careful with them. But if you had a case with a deep pocket, you would use them. As long as you use them carefully, it's fine. And your priority at that point then is actually the perio rather than anything else. But because he wasn't really a periodontitis patient, we would probably use some supra scales if we needed to. If we had already done the ultrasonic and the airflow and we still had deposits there, we had to remove.
Pascal Magnier, in his textbook, once, when he was doing feldspathic veneers, which were much more fragile than the ceramics of today, he advises not to use ultrasonics at all on them.
Right.
He felt that the vibration, depending on setting, would micro scratch the surface. I don't know if there's any weight to that. I think it was just his observation. But
I think you still have to be careful with them either way.
With whichever instrument you use.
Whichever instrument you use, exactly. Knowing the settings and what to use where.
Sure.
I think sometimes it's very easy, even with like the EMS powder, some people might not know the classic powder, you shouldn't be using it around ceramics and then it damages it, etc. So you have to know your instruments and your equipment properly before
using it.
Talk me
through classic powder and plus powder.
So there's two. So with the EMS system, there's 2 different powders. There's the plus one and the classic. Plus is made of erythritol and chlorhexidine, and it's very, very it's not abrasive at all. So you can use it around implants. You can even use it on soft tissues. Yeah. Whereas the classic, you can only use it on enamel or like heavy stains. Otherwise, it will cause damage. So sometimes if you you don't know that, I've got a new piece of equipment, and then you just use it, and I've seen cases where this happens in the glaze of the porcelain gut, and it's really annoying. So I think anything that we use in practice, it's good to know like the indications and understand the science behind it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That was a great case, and looking forward to discussing more on the way.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks.
We're so excited to share a very special new launch, something designed to keep you right at the forefront of the perio conversation. So as you might have known, the theme for the summer party is Optimize Your Expertise. And this year we wanted to celebrate the launch of our new podcast, the Perio School Podcast. And what better way to kick it off than with a live panel? I'm thrilled that we have a panel of true industry insiders in conversation this evening, of which, of course, need no introduction as renowned industry experts, colleagues, and friends who also have a key focus on dental education. Dr. Richard. Dr. Richard, I'm sure you have seen him all over social media. He is known for treating showbiz smiles all the time. He's got his own podcast, far more episodes than Life and Smile, actually. So you've been going for a long time, which is super inspiring. And you're always helping younger graduates in terms of your career. So really nice to have you on board. We've got Dr. Millie, who I'm sure you all know as well. Such a wonderful dentist friend. We've been known each other. Actually, you're probably one of the first people to ever refer here when we were back 8 years ago. So still going, so you're still happy. Millie runs, she does lots of educational side of things. She runs her clinic, but also she fast tracks people in terms of Invisalign. And actually, a lot of our referrers have been on your mentoring, and I've seen their cases fly through the roof, which is really exciting. And you're also a BACD board member as well. And then we have the beautiful Angela as well, who, again, so inspiring, not just work, but life, everything else. Angela is a specialist orthodontist. She runs her very successful practice in Wimbledon, multi-specialist practice. I love looking at all your social media. You have such a great vibe for your team, everything you do. You teach on the clear aligner diploma as well. And always something, every time we have a chat, there's always something to take away. And last but not least, Samir, who is definitely another industry great. Again, every time I talk to you, I get something out of it. You do so much. Obviously, you're the director of 11 Dental down the road. And you do your MBA style course as well, which is all about growing your practice, not just clinically, but non-clinically as well. So I think we should give a round of applause to a pretty impressive panel. Leading on from that, I think, Millie, you do your mentorship for I've been doing it for how long now? Probably a couple of years, yeah. And it's been incredible to watch the journey and seeing so many of our network do the mentorship and then just develop their confidence, flying through cases, getting the results. How do you, if you had a new person who started up, who wasn't very confident, what kind of tips do you give them in terms of unlocking potential, essentially?
Unlocking their potential?
Yeah.
I tell them to stop trying to treatment plan in 15 minutes.
Okay.
That is the killer of confidence. Just stop trying to treatment plan in 15 minutes. Concentrate on the patient. Stop thinking about the clinical. Talk to the patient. Find out what they want. Find out why they're there. That why is so important. Talk to the patient. Do your clinical assessment, and then stop talking. Stop giving them answers, because you always shortcut yourself. You're like, oh, I think we could do this. And what's happening is the patient's rapidly losing confidence in you because they've chosen you to be the leader, and now you are not leading. So leave the situation. And always, preempt it. Be like, today we're data gathering, then I'm going to go away and I'm going to put together this fabulous plan for you. And then have your crisis of confidence outside the clinic with your mentor, with your friends, with your colleagues, somewhere you can really sit down, look at all the data that you've gathered and make sure you collect it all. And then go back and you can speak to your patients with the confidence that they need to see from you to trust your leadership in their case.
Especially when someone's newly graduated, they're used to going to a tutor and showing them everything, whereas then they're like on the spot having to make up a plan, which would have taken them an hour in like 2 minutes and probably not doing a good job of it.
And we miss things.
And
we forget to treatment plan the temporary and this, and then by the time you actually get through, like, oh, I'm doing this for free now. That doesn't feel good. And I promised them I could do it this way, but I actually can't, because that's got really difficult tooth movements, or actually we need to do this first, and now I don't know what I'm doing. And you talk themselves into a circle, and then it's lost. And everyone always thinks that second consultation is a waste of time, because they don't want to block out the clinical hours. Well, don't do it in your clinical hours if you don't want to. But that second appointment will make you more money than if you try to do everything in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I also had to go through that transition. And when I accepted it, it was a game changer.
For sure. I mean, Asif Sue in the front here taught me pretty much most of my business stuff. And we still do it with our exam cycle. We still do it here for all of our assessments. Send the patient out. They can have a coffee, they can relax. We can actually, even for Perio, we do this. We can have a look at the radiographs and look at where the calculus is and look at the pockets and then put the treatment plan together. So that's a good tip. Any others?
I think it's education. Go and learn what it is you want to be a master at and actually master it. Because, as soon as we graduate, we seem to do the opposite of what we did at dental school. At dental school, as you said, we want our hand held at every moment, seminal moment in that treatment planning and carrying out the clinical work. And then we come out and we think it's okay to do a 2-day course and be a specialist. Like, how does that, it just doesn't translate, does it? And I think not having that confidence, don't be the person that panics. Be the person that is cool, that knows what they're doing, by educating yourself and understanding that takes time. There are no shortcuts.
I definitely think, that's our logo, our motto for Perio School is invest in yourself. It's never a waste. And the more you invest in yourself, the more you'll get out as well. Samir, any investments that you would recommend for dentists who maybe graduated like over 10, 15 years ago? What would be the best thing that they can do to make a difference to their career?
Well, I think Millie said...
Apart from your MBA course.
Yeah, we all need to be doing that.
Millie said about the leadership, and I think leadership's so important. It's lacking across the world and the countries. You know, let's say a practice owner often hides away when he finds things really difficult. You've got to be a leader in the dental practice if you're a dentist, whether you're a hygienist or whoever that is, you're leading the room. So leadership's a really important trait to understand, that the patient wants you to lead. They're coming in for you to lead, and therefore just a tap on the shoulder and directing them where they need to go and telling them we've got this is actually way more powerful than going through the treatment plan of how you're going to change the marginal ridge and all the rest of it. They want you to lead, and often that is what your team want as well. So when we talk about plateaus and 10, 15-year-old dentists, I just think know where you're at and do a really great assessment of yourself and be critical. Where am I at? Because actually that you're the only person that knows where you're at and where you want to go. And therefore, frank sort of time out wherever you find these little black holes. Find the black holes, find out where you're at, find out where you want to go, and I promise you 3 or 4 action points are going to propel you in that direction.
And now going on to we touched on social media, which is hard to shy away from nowadays. I guess, Richard, you're pretty active on socials, also from a sort of patient perspective. But with the constant change in media, everyone wanting that instant access, do you feel like it's something important for everyone to be aware of, or how has it influenced your sort of business and day to day?
So I think social media can be obviously a very powerful tool, but it can also be quite difficult as well. It's good because some of the things we do are very visual, and we can show the results and we can explain cases, and you can see lots of different things and you can see things from your colleagues. But then it can also become overwhelming, and sometimes you see people doing these amazing cases and you're thinking, wow, are my skills just not as good as theirs, you know? And so it can lead to comparison as well. But I think that still it is a very powerful thing. It's worth using. It's a good way to reach people. It's good for kind of colleague interaction. Patients start DMing, so you need to be careful of that as well. But basically...
No coffees there.
No coffee. But yeah, I think that it is a good tool, and it just depends how you use it. What I always say is, if you're in control of the social media rather than it being in control of you, and that means there's constant consumption where you can just literally be scrolling, obviously TikTok, which has this algorithm where people go through it. But if you can kind of cultivate what you're looking for and try to look for things more educational, I find even with YouTube that there's like so many educational resources. I've learned so many things, like really academic things from YouTube. And now ChatGPT. The other day, one of my patients said, "Oh, I heard about you on ChatGPT," and I thought, yes.
Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you to our panel. We are delighted to welcome into our quick-fire My Dentistry Live Q&A Dr. Purnima Kumar. Dr. Purnima is the William and Mary K. Najjar Endowed Professor of Dentistry and Chair of the Department of Periodontology and Oral Medicine at the University of Michigan School of Dentistry. She earned her dental degree and MS in periodontology in India, and later completed a certificate in periodontology and a PhD in molecular microbiology at the Ohio State University. At OSU, she also served as professor and chair of the Oral Biology PhD program at the College of Dentistry and the James Cancer Center. Dr. Purnima has authored over 100 papers and book chapters, and she's the associate editor of Periodontology 2000, Nature Scientific Reports, and Microbiome. Beyond her countless academic and clinical accomplishments, Dr. Purnima is a passionate advocate for women in science, surgery, and STEM. She supports national and local task forces and volunteers with organizations that empower women across disciplines. Purnima, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. That was quite the introduction. Thank you for such a flattering intro.
Well, thank you for giving up the time, considering how busy you are with your schedule. That's pretty
Never
impressive.
too busy to talk to you, Reena. Never too busy to talk to
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. No, so excited to get started. As you know, this segment of the podcast is all about your story behind the scenes, being a little bit nosy about your lifestyle and seeing what you get up to. So we'll start off with just how do you start your day? What's your sort of ultimate morning routine?
Um, oh wow. Okay. All right. Let's start first thing first, right? Yeah, so I'm a morning person. I wake up super, super early in the morning, and that's kind of, I think that's my superpower that because I wake up so early in the morning, I am able to bridge many time zones and get that, it works out. But I start my day with a workout. So I wake up,
What time
emails.
is early? I need to interrupt. What time is early?
I wake up between 3 and 3:30 in the morning.
Wow. Oh my gosh. That's
Yeah.
super early. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's so helpful, right? Because now it's half the world is still awake. No one's gone
Yes.
to bed yet, or others like me are waking up. So it helps me to get caught up on the day and at least just get a jump start on the day. Feel I like get a lot more accomplished in those first 2 hours of my day than I do during the rest of the day some days, right?
Yep.
So yeah, and then I do emails. I get whatever needs to be done out of the way, and I go work out. I need that hour to myself to. That's my endorphin, right? I get all the whizzies out of my brain, and all my
Yep.
anger and out, and so that's my endorphin release for the day, and yeah.
And it's the same set routine every morning. So you'd get a workout in every day.
Almost every day. Some days, of course, it always happens that you
Sure.
have like a 6 a.m. meeting because it's 2 a.m. and 2 in the afternoon in Europe, or there's a 5. So there are days when that's not possible, but whenever possible, yes.
Amazing.
Yes.
And then you start your day, you have some breakfast. I get are you a breakfast person?
I'm a juicer.
Okay, nice.
Yeah. So fruit is my breakfast, and
Okay.
and so um yeah,
Any
that's
particular
really.
favorites?
So I love citrus, and we're so lucky that we live so close to South America, where either we have citrus from the United States or we're able to get them from South America. So we have both seasons
Yeah.
here. So it's always summer somewhere here on this part of the world. So we get a lot of good citrus. So I do a lot of citrus, and my own research showed us that purple fruits and vegetables,
Yes.
um, strawberries, raspberries, grapes, cherries, black raspberries, blackberries, blueberries. All of these have this wonderful chemical called a anthocyanin, and
Yes.
that's so good. It's a powerful antioxidant. It is anti-inflammatory. So yeah, I throw a little bit of that in as well.
Nice.
So a giant glass of juice to get the day started. Yep, that's
Brilliant.
breakfast.
And then you're ready to go essentially. um,
Absolutely.
three things we can always find in your work bag.
Work bag. Okay. Oh goodness. One thing you will find is a bag of connectors, all kinds, right?
Yep.
So the UPCs, USB-C, A, B, C, all letters of the alphabet of the USBs, adapters for different countries, different continents. So
Right.
just like my passport has stamps from all of these different countries, my bag has adapters for UK, India, Australia, South Africa, United States, of course. So yes, adapters for sure.
Right.
And my husband laughs at me because my passport is always in my work bag, and he's like, either you're going to get lost or you're going to run away. So
Funnily enough, my husband does exactly the same thing, and I always tell him, "Why are you carrying around your pocket?" He goes, "You never know. You never know." But it sounds like, yeah, you do travel a lot. But with the tech side, another favorite question we have is, "What's the most used app on your phone?"
oh my gosh. I'm gonna say Spotify because it's always on. But I've recently been hooked on to this game. It's almost like Candy Crush, but it's called Royal Kingdom.
Okay. Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
it's so zen, you know. I thought some of my favorite thoughts have come up to my brain while I'm playing that
Wow.
game. It's so completely mindless, but I also have an online Scrabble game. So I love Scrabble. I'm a Scrabble addict. So yeah, three. You asked me for one app and I told you three.
Yeah,
But
that's fine. With it, when you're on Spotify, are you more of a music person or a podcast person?
I'm going to say almost 50-50. I love music and I'm really old school in music. So I'm a 90s kid, right? So
Nice.
so all the 90s stars, all of them absolutely they're on play a lot. I love some of the newer singers, Lana Del Rey is absolutely. I'll listen to anything she sings. She has to open her mouth and I'll listen to her. So I love her. But I love good podcasts and the one of my absolute favorite ones that really hooked me, and this is very much like a lifestyle kind of a podcast as well, right? Is called Wiser Than Me.
Right.
So have you heard of it? It's hosted by Julia Dreyfus.
Yes.
Um,
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Yes. So she says, when men grow old, they are called wise and their words are listened to, but when women grow old, they are put out to pasture. And yet so much wisdom resides in these women that they've accumulated through the
Yes.
ages. So she brings on these women and she's had everyone on it from Jane Fonda to um, so just so many people, right? And it's simply amazing. And then she debriefs at the end of it. She debriefs her entire meeting with her mom over a
Right.
phone call, and it's absolutely just how she
Fantastic.
does it. You have to not only admire the content but also just how the whole programming is done, right? The whole putting it together. So as a creator I admire it, and as a listener, I just devour that content. It's absolutely brilliant. One thing Jane Fonda said is really stuck with me, and I'm very intentional about practicing it. She said, "We have to spend our entire lives preparing our body to grow old."
That's quite profound when you really think about it. Yeah.
Right? I had to pause for a minute. It was like a
Yeah.
throwaway comment, and then I thought about it, and I was like, "Oh wait, yes." So everything that you do in when you're young and are able to take your body is able to take a lot of abuse. Your
Yeah.
best bet is not to abuse your body. Is actually to prepare your body to live healthily
Yes.
in old age.
That's a very important takeaway. I will definitely check that out in more detail. It sounds great. Going to the clinic now, what would be your favorite treatment to perform?
So and even in clinic I wear two hats, right? And with one hat I am treating disease, and like I'm treating periodontal disease, and this is I'm doing my best to keep it under control, because you're never going to cure this disease. You're going to keep it under control
Mhm.
and manage it. And with my other hat, I'm reconstructing tissue. I'm growing back things that aren't there, right? So,
Right.
so I have a favorite in each of these procedures, right? So for me, my favorite procedure in the treatment of periodontal disease, would you believe it, is scaling and root planing. I love it. It's therapeutic. It is an opportunity to make a difference at the root cause of the disease, pun intended,
Yes.
right? So it really is truly managing the etiology and the pathology of the disease. So you're starting with the very basics, and it allows you to, in a very in a relatively non-invasive way, make a huge transformation in the disease progression. So that's absolutely my favorite thing to do, and I do it a lot. I don't most, I would say 99% of my scaling and root planings I do by myself for my surgical patients. Once my
Right.
patient says, yes, I'm going to do surgery, I start with their initial treatment myself, and then I take them through surgery. So they stay with me through the whole process, and it helps me to build trust and manage expectations and meet expectations. So it's a very, very iterative process. It allows me to build a beautiful relationship with the patient. And we're both partners in this control of this disease, right? It allows my patient
Yes.
to take ownership very gradually, but take ownership of their disease process and what's happening to their body, and then put them on the driver's seat in controlling the process.
Right.
So that transformation is usually is wonderful for me to see. So I like that very much. But on the other side, one of nature's, the human body miracle is how much we can invade the sterile spaces and make a
Mhm.
difference, right? So my other favorite procedure is doing a sinus grafting procedure through the lateral approach, the Caldwell Luck approach. So it's called the direct sinus lift, and I love doing that. I would do that morning, noon, and night, and just the transferring. Sometimes, it's not. We do that so we can gain space to place the implants there, but then the patient will always tell you, "Oh, I can breathe better. My
Right.
sinusitis is not there anymore." And then you're like, yes, that is the whole point of the surgery.
Yeah.
This is something that we've borrowed from the ENT scope of treatment. But this originally was designed to make people's sinuses drain back into their nose, instead of sitting there like a catchment bowl collecting everything that couldn't be draining into your nose. So we're actually, yes, changing the drainage plane of your sinuses. So it's amazing when patients walk in and say, I don't mind. I don't have this postnasal drip anymore, or my sinuses don't feel stuffed anymore. And you're like, yes,
So
yes, of
both
course.
both very different treatments, but both having an impact on someone's day-to-day life. What would be your career highlight so far? I mean, there's so much to choose from, but so far, like, what would be a standout moment, or one standout moment if you had to pick?
Um, Career highlight moment. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if this is a highlight or not, but for me, it's very meaningful. So I'll tell you this. All usually my residents do their first sinus grafting with me. They've chosen to. It's not by design. Just word of mouth. They know how much I love it, and I enjoy it. So they always tend to do their first sinus first second till they're happy with their, they do it with me under my supervision. And I've so far received 3 or 4 texts, emails, conversations, whatever, right, from former residents who would be like, Purnima, I was in someone's sinus. It's 5 p.m. and I'm ready to go home, but I can hear your voice in my head saying, stay on the bone. And you're my reason I completed that procedure today. So thank you. And it's so
Wow.
the same message gets, comes across. So then you realize that the ripple effect, right? The butterfly, can a
Yeah.
butterfly flutter its wings and cause a tsunami? You're like, yes, it can. Yes, 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 yes. So that I would say it's so humbling yet so heartening to hear.
And so rewarding. I think one of the best parts of teaching, I guess, when you have comments like that, it makes every second worth it. How would your colleagues describe you?
How would my colleagues
Difficult
just,
question, I know.
yeah, I'm going to say my colleague who, I'm going to quote my colleague who recently described me as a pathologic optimist.
Love it. Yes.
He's like, how can you always be so positive about it? Can you just moan a little bit? I'm like, no, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. So, yes, pathologic optimism, I
I love
guess.
that. And how would you describe yourself in one word? Would you do the same thing? Would you say the same thing or different?
Well, I am always a glass half full person. I refuse to see because there's always opportunities once. But if I were to look back my life and reflect on it, I would say I'm one of those bendy, sway persons. You know that Mr.
Mhm.
What do they call them? Mr. That thing, that the car
Yeah,
thing,
the
right?
Mr. Yeah, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? That balloon, that long tube, balloon tube,
Oh, yes, 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 I do. I don't know the name for it, but I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
right? How it
Move with
sways
the
and
wind
bends
and
and
yeah, very
yes,
flexible to change and adapt.
exactly. I found that what I've been able to do so far successfully is because of my willingness to be completely adaptive to the situation that I'm in, and my willingness to pivot
Yes.
literally on a dime.
I think that's so important, especially over the last few years when so much has changed. I think that's the key for, I think, success. When you look at other successful people, them being able to pivot and adapt and move with the flow. So, or being ahead of the tide. You mentioned a quote earlier from the podcast, but do you have any other favorite life quotes that resonate with you that you think about often?
Yes, and I say this more than I should to my children. And it's Gandhiji's quote, right? An eye for an eye will only make the whole world go blind. And I mean, that truly resonates with me at so many levels. We don't have to think of an eye for an eye as a tit for
Mhm.
tat, but also about, when you look very deeply into it, what I have learned from that quote is to be true to oneself and not to be reactive, um emotionally, not to be reactive, but really just to be grounded and centered, and always in tune with your emotions, so
Yeah.
you're not simply reacting to a situation, but you're actually responding to it in a very thoughtful, very intentional manner that will not give you regret in the future.
Yeah, I think that's something to remember every day. It's such an important quote. Where can we find you off duty when you're not working? What do you get up to with your family or friends? Where would you be sort of off duty?
So my favorite thing to do is always my our backyard. We have an outdoor kitchen in the backyard, and just
Wow.
having the family around it, and throwing a pizza or cooking something on the grill. Absolutely. Just having everyone around me. That's my happy place when I can hear my daughter's voices and
Mhm.
my husband yelling at them. That's my but everyone's grown up and flown, and so that doesn't happen every day, right? Um
Yes.
but also, I have a little backyard garden of my own, a couple of fountains running there,
Wow,
just
wonderful.
yes, the bells and lots of flowers and hummingbirds coming by. Actually, I'm sitting here looking out at it, and I see the hummingbird at the feeder right now.
Amazing.
So
Wow. That's your
that's
happy
my
place.
little slice of paradise, and I have my one chair, so no one else can share that space.
You mentioned you are a person that is, always looking at the glass half full, very positive. How do you stay motivated? Have you always is that in Bill, or what keeps you, waking up that early in the morning? Like, do you ever think, gosh, I don't feel like it today? Or how do you keep your energy so high and motivated?
Um, you know, I think my biggest problem, some people would say, is that I refuse to take no for an answer. There's always a solution. There's always a solution. And it's just that we if as soon as my this is a quote read. I don't even know if it's a quote or a piece of advice or something, right? It's about how to do well on an exam.
Okay.
We all have this exam fear, right? You go into an exam, into a test, and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't remember half the stuff I studied, right? And so when you look at a question, you start panicking, and you're like, I don't remember the answer to this. The advice was, um, tell your brain you know the answer to this, and leave that question, go to something else, but tell your brain 5 times you know the answer, and while you're looking at something else, there's a subconscious that will
Mhm.
that'll bubble up and find the answer and bring it back to you. so
Right.
so that was a strategy I used very successfully in test taking, because I'm not a very good test taker. And that's something that I use now, where I always tell myself there's a solution and there's a reason why this is happening. So there's always a reason. And I firmly believe that the universe has a reason for things to make things happen, or for some
Yes.
things to happen. Just because I don't see the reason for it doesn't mean the reason doesn't exist. So that
Right.
allows me to look for solutions, to look for the silver lining, to move things forward. And yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I guess sometimes you can only join up the dots afterwards when you look back and think, okay, now I realize why that happened in that way. So another interesting question. What did you want to do for a profession when you were a child? Was dentistry always something that you were interested in, or is it a passion that you developed?
Dentistry was definitely a passion that I developed, but I always wanted to be in the medical field. It kind of was again. I mean, you're of Indian origin, right?
Yes.
Yes. Growing up in India, the matriarch of the family looks at you and says, "She's going to be this," and then it's
Yeah.
ordained, right? So my grandma
Doctor,
apparently looked.
dentist, accountant. Yeah.
Right. The grandma apparently looked at me the day I was born and she said, "This is the doctor in the family." And so it was just, so it just tracked in that sense. But then when I got into dentistry, there was no looking back. I absolutely loved it. And it gave me the opportunity to learn skills with both my hands and my brain, right? I use both parts of
Yes.
it. So do both the art and the science. So it fulfills me in so many different ways.
And
But yeah,
perio is something you then looked into later on. And what fascinated you about periodontology?
building foundations. I am very much a building from the ground up kind of person, and to me, Perio does that. And it builds foundations, it builds relationships, it attacks the disease, the root cause of the disease. Again, so many puns here, but when we talk Perio, it's all about that, right? So it's the root cause. So fundamentally, you are helping a patient retain their natural dentition in its most optimal functionality that is possible. And that's, I feel, the best gift that you can give to someone is help them retain their natural body parts and hold
Yeah,
on to
for
them,
sure. For sure.
right? So that I really 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 enjoy that. Plus, it's one of the most evidence based specialties we
Yes.
have today in dentistry. We know, I feel very comfortable doing some of the things I do because I'm like, I know why this works, not just that it works. I know how it works. I can have a biological rationale for this. As I do this procedure on you clinically, I know what molecules are coming together, what cells are coming together to make the difference, and how I can harness those mechanisms and those pathways to best benefit you, the patient. So to me, I am every, as my hands are working, my brain is also exercising, right? So I
Yes.
love that about Perio. Absolutely love it.
I couldn't agree more. My final question is, what are you most looking forward to? What do you have in projects coming up, or trips away? What's in your diary that you're most looking forward to?
Oh my goodness. Wow. Immediate future. Our daughter is getting married. We have twins.
Wow.
So
Oh,
the younger
wow.
twin. Yes, the younger twin by 6 minutes. She's
Congratulations.
younger by 6 minutes. Um, I know. She's getting married in September,
Fantastic.
and yeah, so that is the immediate future. So I'm consumed by mother
Of
of the
course.
bride role. So absolutely mother of the bride on steroids right now.
Wow, that's huge. Well, listen, Purnima, thank you so much for being so generous with your conversation, sharing so many inspiring quotes and backgrounds, and explaining all of that to us. So, thank you so much. I'm sure we'll hear more from you. But thank you again for being on the Perischool podcast.
Thank you. This was absolutely fascinating. And I'm a huge fan of your podcast. So it was such an honor to be asked. And I love talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you. This season of the Perio School podcast is sponsored by Colgate. Register on Colgate's professional education hub to access all professional and patient resources, including your one-stop shop for all verifiable ECPD. Visit www.colgateprofessional.co.uk today to sign up and register.